Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What the Fuck Are We Doing? So, last week we discussed is she guilty, is she not, of Florence Maybrick. And I let it slip there for you guys that I'm going to do a thing about the brothers. Now, while I was doing my research for Florence last week, I stumbled upon a little thing that caught my attention. Now, you guys are gonna have to bear with me. So let's just jump in. So let's first have a little bit of a look about into James's life itself. Okay, so as we know, James Maybrick was a well-known cotton merchant in Liverpool, and the Maybrick family had been established in Liverpool for several generations before James was born, to William and Susanna on the 24th of October 1838. Now, James had 6 brothers, 2 of whom never survived to adulthood. James was actually named after his brother that died in 1837, so a year before he was born. The brother was 4 months old when he passed away. The other brother, Alfred Maybrick, died at the age of 4 in 1848. 4 of his brothers survived, one of whom is William. He became a carpenter and a gilder's apprentice. Thomas was born in 1846, and Edwin, who was born in 1851, went into commerce and participated in the cotton business. Michael Maybrick, who was born in 1841, achieved considerable fame and success as a music composer. He, however, used the stage name Stephen Adams. Now, the marriage of James and Florence was well known and it was well documented. But a Scottish lawyer, William McDougall, alleged in 1891 the existence of a previous spouse. Although no marriage certificate has ever been found, the 1891 census records, released in 1992, appear to confirm this allegation. Sarah Ann Robertson, listed as single and aged 44, was residing in London at the time, although other legal documents show her as Sarah Ann Maybrick. In 1868, her stepfather's will showed her as Sarah Ann Maybrick, wife of James Maybrick. Upon her death on January 17th, 1927, she is listed in the records as Sarah Ann Maybrick, otherwise Robertson. She lived on Bromley Street near Whitechapel for a while, as well on Mark Lane across the road from Whitechapel. So this may be the probability that James Maybrick's association with Sarah Ann lead to familiarity with the area where the Ripper murders occurred. But let's jump back to 1871, where census records show James Maybrick is unmarried and back in London living with his mother. About 2 years later, he formed Maybrick and Company, cotton merchants, with his brother Edwin as a junior partner. In 1874, James left for Virginia to establish a branch office. This decision later proved to be a crucial turning point in his life. Upon his return to England in the early spring of 1880, 2 significant changes had occurred. 3 years after arriving in Norfolk, Virginia, James contracted malaria. After an initial but unsuccessful prescription of quinine, a medicine used to treat malaria, a second treatment consisting of arsenic and strychnine was tried. This might be bizarre in today's time, but it was not unheard of in the 1870s. Fowler's medicine, which contained arsenic, was a popular tonic at the time. Arsenic also appealed to James as it was believed to increase virility at the time. Well, I don't know how true that is, but okay. He was not the only person, however. Arsenic and strychnine abuse was becoming fashionable among professional men in America and Britain. Arsenic is quite addictive, also deadly, but overwhelming evidence suggests that James carried this habit to his grave. On March 12, 1880, Maybrick departed New York aboard the SS Baltic. During the 6-day voyage to Liverpool, he was introduced to the beguiling Florence Chandler and her mother, Baroness Caroline Conrooks. Florence was known as Florrie. She was a 5'3" strawberry blonde with blue eyes. Although Maybrick was 24 years her senior, a whirlwind romance ensued between them. Upon their arrival in Liverpool, James and Florrie already planned a marriage for the following summer. The fashionable wedding took place on the 27th of July, 1881 in London at St. James Street. Florrie prematurely gave birth to their son, James Chandler, known affectionately as Bobo, 8 months after the wedding, in 1882. In 1882, the Maybrecks returned to America with their infant. The next 2 years, their time was divided between Norfolk and Liverpool. Declining business opportunities prompted Maybrick to return to England in March 1884. He formally resigned from the Norfolk Cotton Exchange on August 22, 1884. The family lived in Grassendale, a suburb of Liverpool. An economic slump, however, also occurred in England that same year. Maybrick became increasingly distressed with health and financial worries. His use of arsenic and other powders continued. On July 20th, 1886, Florrie gave birth to a daughter, Gladys Evelyn. The birth to their second child did little to help the Maybricks' troubled marriage. It was rapidly deteriorating, despite the Maybricks' acceptance in Liverpool social circles and an outward display of affluence. By this time, James had been showing signs of substance abuse for several years. In 1887, Florrie discovered there was another woman in her husband's life, and later that same year, she met Alfred Brearley, a cotton broker with whom she had an affair. By this time, they probably moved to separate beds, and the first Ripper murder was less than 9 months away. In early March of 1888, the Maybricks moved to the Battlecrest house in Egbert, less than a mile away. The estate consisted of several acres of well-tended gardens, trees, a pond filled with fish, and a small natural stream. Despite the move to a new home, the marriage continued to decline. James maintained his gloomy disposition, hypochondria, and hot temper. Violence erupted on the night of March 29th, 1889, which resulted in a black eye for Florrie. On April 24th, Florrie purchased a dozen flypapers, something she definitely regretted doing for the rest of her life. Also on the same day, James obtained another one of his prescriptions as his health continued to fail. More medicine arrived by package on the 26th, and the following day James Maybrick was seriously ill, apparently from an overdose of these substances. From this point on, James never regained his health. After seeing his doctor on the 3rd of May, he went to visit his office for the last time, assuming that the diary that was found is authentic. This would be his last entry, which was dated the same day. Probably fearing for the worst, his brother Michael journeyed from London to see him. At 08:40 p.m. on the 11th of May, 1889, James Maybrick died. Michael took immediate charge of the family matters after his brother passed away, including the ailing Florence. Florrie, even before James passed away, was already suspected of poisoning her husband, but that was covered in last week's episode. So if you want more details about it, please go back and listen to that one. So the reason for this episode is actually the following. The story of James Maybrick was not associated with the Ripper, well, Jack the Ripper, case until his diary emerged in 1992. While the authenticity of this diary may be hotly debated, it nonetheless has yet to be proven a forgery. Whether it is real or fake, it maintains remarkable consistency with the known facts. The diary also introduces what some would call startling evidence to support its authenticity. Sorry. So in 1992, Michael Barrett, a former Liverpool scrap metal merchant, produced a journal which he claimed had been given to him by a friend in a pub the previous year. Although the author of the journal doesn't identify himself, it is quite obvious from various personal references and from other information contained within the journal that the diarist is meant to be the Liverpool cotton merchant James Maybrick. In the diary, the author makes the claim that he had seen his wife, whom he calls the bitch or the whore, in the pages of the diary with her unnamed lover in the Whitechapel district of Liverpool. The subsequent rage that he experienced following this sighting sent him on a murderous rampage in the Whitechapel district of London, in the course of which he mutilated and killed 5 prostitutes. The journal contains somewhat long-winded descriptions on the murders before ending with the assertion, "I give my name that all know of me, so history do tell what love can do to a gentleman born. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper." But how about the actual details of the crimes? Do they demonstrate that the author did indeed have first-hand knowledge that only the killer would know? Well, in a word, no. It is apparent on close scrutiny of the journal that many of the descriptions of the crimes and the crime scenes are actually taken from press reports and later accounts of Jack the Ripper murders, and that because of this, the journal replicates some of the widespread inaccuracies and errors with regards to the Jack the Ripper murders. Let's take Mary Kelly's murder as an example. She was one of Jack the Ripper's victims, if you do not know Mary Kelly. I just want to add a trigger warning here on the following. There is some discussion regarding her murder and details. So if you don't want to hear, just skip like 30 seconds or 45 seconds ahead. Anyway, so as far as her murder goes, the author gloats over how he placed parts of her body all over her room and goes into sickening details of how he had cut off her breasts and, having kissed them for a while, he set them down upon her bedside table. The idea of Mary Kelly's body parts being spread all over the room, or in some accounts hung around the walls like Christmas decorations, is definitely not the case. There is no denying that the fact that the murder inside 13 Miller's Court, where Mary Kelly's body was found, was horrific, but the mutilated body parts were confined to the bed and its immediate vicinity, and was not strewn or even strung around the room. Her breasts were not placed on the bedside table, it was in fact found beneath her body. This is just an example of the misconceptions of Jack the Ripper's crimes. But this shows the journal was not written by the killer himself or even herself. There is, however, another intriguing piece of memorabilia that links Maybrick to Jack the Ripper. In 1993, Albert Johnson purchased an antique gold watch, and on the inside of the watch he found the initials of Jack the Ripper's 5 victims, together with the signature of J. Maybrick and the words, "I am Jack." As with the journal, the watch has been subjected to scientific analysis, and the scratches have been found to be compatible with the period 1888 to 1889, although these findings have been disputed. But the sudden appearance of the watch so soon after the journal, that is just, it is suspicious. Come on. And whether it was possible that both of them were created at the same time. Using them to find out whether Maybrick was guilty or not depends on proving that they are genuine, and this has never been satisfactorily done. The arguments are both for and against James Maybrick being Jack the Ripper, although the general consensus is that the diary is a forgery. So was James Maybrick Jack the Ripper? Well, while the evidence may seem to conclusively point to James's guilt, there are many questions surrounding the suspect which still needs to be answered. Maybrick's knowledge of London and the fact that he had previously lived on the East End ensured that he was familiar with the Ripper's hunting ground. Additionally, the fact that he was regularly travelling to and from Liverpool meant that he could easily escape up north to avoid detection if police in London happened to get a little too close for comfort. A further hint to Maybrick's guilt is a Victorian crime scene photograph of one of the victims taken at the site of the murder. In the background, the initials FM appear to have been scrawled on the wall behind the body in blood. Those who believe that Maybrick is indeed the Ripper think that this initials is for Florence Maybrick, his wife. This would definitely add weight to the theory that the Ripper murders were committed by an individual who hated women and wanted revenge. Could Jack the Ripper really have been seeking revenge on his wife for having an affair? I mean, it is highly debated that Jack the Ripper obviously had something against women. Some say it was because his mother was a prostitute. Others say he was a scorned lover. I don't know. So anyway, but one person who definitely seems to be convinced is author Shirley Harrison. In her opinion, not only is Maybrick Jack the Ripper, but he may also have been another serial killer active in Texas in 1884 and 1885. The servant girl and Anilla. Sorry, I have practiced this word so many times and I'm still butchering it. So the servant girl Annihilator brutally murdered 8 people over a 2-year killing spree, just 3 years before the first Ripper murder occurred. But as we know, James Maybrick is just one of many suspects who have been accused of being Jack the Ripper over the years. The diary and the pocket watch may seem to be pretty conclusive, hard-hitting evidence, but experts are still divided over whether or not they are genuine or just a very well pulled off hoax. So, I mean, it's up to you. It's basically, I mean, this has been many years ago. So, obviously, the guy who did this, or woman, who was the true Jack the Ripper, has passed since. Okay, so obviously I can't say a woman because it was made obvious that back then that it's a man. I don't know why. Like, when I was younger, I was so intrigued with Jack the Ripper, but there's a lot of details that I have forgotten over the years. But, I mean, this is hard-hitting evidence. I mean, the diary. Okay, even if the murder sprees that he wrote down in the diary is not what the murder crime scenes actually was, it is a clear sign of a sick individual for writing that. I mean, even if it's a hoax, if it's a forgery, you need some help, my friend. It's like, seriously. You can't be able to write things like that and there's nothing actually wrong with you. But if that diary was James's diary or journal, whatever you want to call it, it is clear that he had a fascination with Jack the Ripper if he wasn't himself. Just going on the contents of the journal, it's clear that somewhere he got either fascinated with the crime scenes or the crimes themselves and decided, I'm going to jot this down in a diary because this guy fascinates me. And then, you know what? I'm just going to add a little tad bit in there of what I would have done to the bodies. But I mean, it's sick. You need to be a sick individual to be able to do that regarding a crime scene that has already happened and which hit the community hard back then. But yes, so if he was Jack the Ripper, can we just all agree that Florence did the world a favor if she did? um, poison him because she took a killer off the street. Yes, she was punished harshly for it, but maybe, who knows, maybe Florence knew something that we didn't. Maybe she was like, you know what, I can't keep your secret anymore. I know what you're doing at night. I followed you or whatever. I'm going to put a stop to this because no one's going to believe me. Because remember, he was, even though he had financial struggles, he had influence back then. I mean, he was a cotton merchant, he had money before the economic crisis hit him, he had friends in high places. So, and going back to the 1800s, women barely had a say in anything. It was, I think, yeah, this was way before we had rights. So, women were seen and not heard, basically. The thing we said about kids, not if many years ago, children are seen, not heard, you know? That your parents used to say to you to get you out underneath their feet. So, I don't know, maybe only they will know. They took it with them to their graves. But I think personally, maybe Florence knew something. She knew what was up, and she was like, I need to put a stop to this because no one's going to believe me. He's already addicted to arsenic, so what is a few milligrams or whatever you want to call it? A few milliliters, sorry, actually, because it was a liquid. What's a few milliliters more to what he's usually having? And yeah, that few milliliters more is actually what killed him. But yeah, um, in my opinion, there's more evidence regarding James Maybrick being linked to Jack the Ripper than there is to any other. I know has been a story also around that H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper and he moved to America. That's why they never caught him, because just as they were closing in on him, he decided he's going to move away. But then again, there's also the speculation that the person who was Jack the Ripper had some form of medical background because of the insertions that he did on the cuts he made to remove their organs. Sorry, it's graphic. But yeah, so I don't know. You guys, what do you guys think? Like, do you think he did it? Do you think he might be a viable suspect? Like, nothing's gonna happen to him anymore. I mean, he's been dead for hundreds of years. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, guys, sorry, it's short and sweet this week. I'll make a longer episode next week. I'm gonna continue on my rants about innocent people, or do you think they're innocent or not? So yeah, stay tuned. Give me a like, give me a follow if you think I'm doing a good job. Comment, send me a mail. I'm gonna put in the description below our email address. Follow us on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook. And yeah, I will see you guys next week again. So until then, be safe, be kind, and be you. Bye.